Thanks for joining us at the 2025 Zero Emission Fleets Reconnect Conference. These conference presentations are proudly brought to you by Plug-in BC.
So joining me is Adam Crowston. He's the general manager of RIZON Truck Canada. And now I like to think that I know a little bit about electric vehicles, but everyone's got blind spots, and I had essentially no idea that RIZON really existed up until maybe a couple of months ago, when I first saw that. And we might get into this in a little bit, but that first delivery of an electric truck in Canada, just across the water in Victoria. Can you tell me a little bit about RIZON just off the top? Because I'm sure there might be people out there who are watching and listening who might not be acquainted.
Yeah, for sure. So RIZON is the 9th brand under Daimler Truck. And so if you're not familiar with Daimler, Daimler is the largest, oldest truck manufacturer in the world. So they would be the ones manufacturing Freightliner, Western Star, Fuso trucks in the rest of the world, Freightliner custom chassis. So 9 brands under that, Mercedes-Benz as well, and internationally as well. And so RIZON is the branding for our all-electric Class 4-5 truck in North America. And I say North America specifically because this chassis on this platform has been running since 2017 in other places in the world, and this is the 3rd iteration of it. And so we're just coming now to North America and just having the first truck starting to land now.
And, you know, RIZON is like you were mentioning, a relatively new brand under Daimler. I'm curious about Daimler's overall electrification strategy and, you know, what makes Daimler, and I guess by extension RIZON, unique in the commercial EV space?
Yeah, so Daimler is committed to the energy transition that we all see coming, with goals to have CO2 neutral vehicles on the ground in their full portfolio by 2050. And so that's a dual track strategy between electric as well as hydrogen. So Daimler is partnering with a number of people to look at hydrogen options within trucks. And then we also have a number of battery electric as well, from our Class 4-5 RIZON all the way up to Class 8 tractors with the e-Cascadia. And so the nice thing about what RIZON brings to the market is, you know, we have the German engineering that comes from Daimler, and they're manufactured in Japan. So you have the Japanese quality that we would expect to see from manufacturing there as well too. The nice thing as well, compared to maybe some other experiences people would have in the market, is we are plugging into an existing Daimler network. And so wherever we're selling vehicles, we have service and parts on the ground ready to go. And so these vehicles are fully supported so that when people look at what do you expect from an OEM as far as that kind of support, we have that on the ground right now running. And so I think that's what sets us out apart a little bit. Some of the branding we use is bringing calm to the chaos as far as like electrification goes, because, you know, there's so many startups, so many questions, but with our solution and that support that comes with it, we're making that transition easier for customers.
And, you know, you talked about the Class 4-5 electric truck segment. Why do you see this segment as kind of the biggest growth opportunity for electrification? And to play off of that, what industries have you found are showing the most interest?
Yeah, so it's funny, once you get into it and you start looking around, you see these trucks everywhere on the road. So Class 4-5, as if we look at electrification and where the real use cases is in urban environments. And so these Class 4-5 trucks for last mile delivery for municipalities and things like that, it's a great use case. A lot of these customers, their duty cycle has them coming back to their office for overnight or in between shifts. And so it's a great opportunity where you can get into an electric vehicle in this class with a lower entry cost on your charging, because you can get in with just a level 2 charger. Our truck will charge up to 15.4 kilowatts, so 80 amps on a level 2 charger. And so when you look at the charge time for that, more than enough time between shifts to be able to charge and not having to invest in a costly level 3 charging system. And so I think that kind of makes medium duty perfect for electrification as far as like our next step when we look at past passenger cars and as we work our way up to some of the Class 6, 7, 8 vehicles.
And so, you know, just, you know, we've got folks from all across the spectrum here who watch and listen to this. I'm curious, if you were to walk by a municipal works yard, you know, let's say Vancouver's municipal works yard, approximately what % of those vehicles would you say are Class 4 and 5?
Yeah, that's a good question. Each department within the municipality will operate a little bit differently. And so, you know, we're talking to some municipalities where they're looking at our truck for, they go around and pick up used mattresses that are thrown on the side of the road. We have other ones where they're looking at landscaping operations, some for some civil works because you can put a dump body and put some gravel in the back of it. So I think if you walk past a yard, I think they're actual work trucks. You're going to see pretty high percentage, I'd say maybe 50 to 70% in kind of that class 4 or 5 in some of these applications. One of the great things we've seen when we go to visit municipalities is they've already been having this conversation for a number of years, and they are electrifying, their Ford Lightnings and their smaller, bylaws cars and things like that. So they're already well aware of what electrification looks like, and then this medium duty is just the next step in going further to reduce their carbon emissions.
And, we kind of touched on it a little bit here, when I think of class 4 or 5 vehicles, my first thought is, the municipal works yard. But beyond, municipalities, right? I just want to ask, who are RIZON's kind of primary customers? Who are the folks who are coming to you the most with interest in your product?
Yeah, so when we were first hitting the market, we see the main use case would be like last mile delivery. And so coming in, that's definitely what we were looking for. But we've seen pretty surprisingly across a broad spectrum of people. So, looking at the healthcare providers who are transporting materials or samples back and forth between labs. We're seeing our first one we delivered to Villamar Construction on the island. It's a construction customer. And so we didn't see that as being like our key demographic, but we're having questions all across the spectrum. What can you do with this body and this chassis? And so I think because we come with that OEM service people are looking for, and we're very upfitter friendly, the chassis is just a bare chassis. So on the frame rails, you can mount whatever equipment you want to kind of look for. And so that opens up so many different options for what customers could want to see. And so, municipalities is huge. Landscaping, construction. We have some reefer demos going out there. So we have, cold food, produce, that kind of thing. Basically anything you can imagine moving in an urban environment, there's a use case for a RIZON.
And I want to kind of touch on Villamar Construction here, because we're talking February. So, about a month before we're recording this. That's your very first electric truck delivery in Canada. And just as, a person who works for this company, did that kind of fill you with a sense of pride that, the first set of wheels for the customer are on the road? Like, how did that feel? It's
awesome. So I started with RIZON about May of last year. RIZON's been in the U.S. for about a year and a half. And so it's been awesome to see the tremendous uptake in Canada versus some other markets, and particularly in BC, and we also see a lot of interest out of Quebec as well too. So it's awesome to see. I drive an EV personally, and so I've definitely bought into why we need electric vehicles on the ground. And so to be able to see that first one delivered was awesome. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of people behind the scenes trying to make this work for the customer and set them up for success. And to see that happen was awesome. So we're very excited to see them hitting the ground. We expect, we probably have about a dozen more in different stages of upfitting. So we expect to see a lot more on the ground here in 2025.
That's exciting. And, you've got your first vehicle, on the roads now. I kind of want to touch on, the bells and whistles, the key features of RIZON trucks. So one of the things that I always like to kind of pose to people who sit down with me is I always like to conjure in my mind and in their mind the image of this fleet operator who's a little bit reticent, a little bit maybe hesitant, doesn't exactly know what to expect, how to feel, what to do. Maybe they're a little bit doubtful. For this fleet operator, who might be watching or listening, what are the standout features of RIZON trucks? Like, what sets them apart?
Yeah, so we touched on it a little bit before, but that service and support is huge. There's lots of people who can manufacture an EV vehicle, but being able to support it once it's on the road, because these are work trucks, and so they get a lot of miles put on them, especially compared to the passenger vehicles, and so you need to have a support network there to keep them up and running. All of our customers, you and I are passenger car. If it breaks down, maybe we have to take a taxi. For a lot of work customers, that's money that they're losing every day. And so we understand that. And so we're committed to having the readiness there to support the vehicle on the ground. And so that's a huge part as far as that goes. As far as some of the other technical specs, so on our larger battery pack, you can get, between 250 and 260 kilometers worth of range, which we find a lot of customers, there's a good use case there. Obviously, everyone's always asking for a bit more range, but in the perfect scenario, I think, you would be able to replace one for one an electric for a diesel or a gasoline truck. And so that's just not the case we see in a lot of situations right now. And so, we need to ask some of the questions around, how's that fleet manager organizing their fleet? So someone might come say to me, hey, my average truck goes 250 kilometers a day. And I say, and so they're like, well, that probably won't work for me. Well, in my mind, that means probably 40% of your trucks it will work for, because that's your average, right? And so how do we have those conversations? And so we're able to come along and support the customer through that and work with them in that range. Again, we're very upfitter friendly. We have AC and DC charging, so AC charging up to 15.4 kilowatts, DC charging up to 104. And the other part too, is the safety and comfort of the vehicle. So we all know that EVs are a lot quieter, less road noise, things like that. So when you're looking at your fleets and your people operating them and their health and safety, there's less fatigue, there's less noise. We have an air ride seat in it, so it's very geared towards a good user experience in the vehicle as well. Active safety systems, side guard assists, all those kind of things to make people enjoy their ride more during the day.
And one of the things that I think is immediately apparent, but I think some people might not immediately clue into, is the fact that RIZON uses this cab over design, right? And so you mentioned that these are constructed in Japan, and I know a little bit about Japanese cars. And when it comes to like trucks, especially in Japan, cab over is by far and large the truck. Yeah. In Japan. And of course, in Canada, North America, I feel like you kind of see, in Canada, you see a bit of a mix. You don't see as many, I think, cab overs as you do where the cab is behind the engine. You've got that traditional kind of like L-shaped
conventional
block.
Yeah.
Why go with the cab over design? What kind of advantages does that provide?
Yeah, it's funny. So, I spent some time in Japan visiting the factory, and you don't see conventional truck anywhere. You look at some of the places in Europe, even up in the Class 8 trucks, they're all cab over. Different places in the Middle East. It's a very strong design worldwide. In North America, we seem to want to hold on to that kind of conventional shape, right? So there's some advantages for sure. So in some of the larger cab overs, you will actually see some better energy efficiency just through the way that the air actually flows through the truck rather than up against just kind of the flat face. So depending on kind of the OEM that you're coming from, what we also see too is there's a much better kind of turning radius because you're right on top of the wheels and your visibility is huge. So especially when we look at fleet operators, we all know we don't want to damage our trucks and things like that. And so just the visibility when you're sitting in the cab is phenomenal for that. And so again, when we look at kind of the tight urban environment, if you can get rid of that extra 2-3 feet of engine in the front, that's that much tighter spaces that you can get in when you're looking at some of the streets in downtown Vancouver and places like that.
And now that you mention it, does the electric vehicle concept itself lend itself better to a cab over design, do you think?
That's a good question. We haven't explored that really on our end because Daimler does have electric vehicles in the EM2 and the eCascadia, but they also have electric vehicles in the eActros, other places in the world. So I don't know if there's necessary design pros and cons to the setup that we've seen in what we've looked at.
And of course, a big thing that we talk about, and every year when we meet for Reconnect, it's always neat to see what's changed in the last year. I always like to joke with people that there's always at least a good chunk of technology that is utterly unrecognizable from where it was last year. Is there anything, in terms of technology, in terms of manufacturing, that realm of things that is kind of caught your eye as something to keep an eye out in the near future?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of, research going into different things like battery chemistry. And so, that might look like, we're still looking at a battery, but maybe the chemistry is different in it to get you, better safety measures or better range. So we'll see some things coming out of there. One of the things that Daimler's invested in globally is in a company called Ample, which looks at battery swapping technology. And so there's some customers in Japan interested in that. The use case and the cost of it, I think a lot of people in the electric space are quick to say, no, that won't work. And we see that, with a lot of customers rather than focusing on what does work or where is the use case. And so, what they're doing in that kind of technology, there is a use case for it, whether it's suitable for broader adoption, I think we'll come and see. But one of the features of our truck compared to some of the other competitors is that we have an e-axle as opposed to a conventional axle, and so we see better energy usage out of that, more direct kind of torque right to the wheels, and lower maintenance costs and things like that. So we might see some technological advances in some of those areas, as well as some of the safety features. We don't have any plans personally for autonomous driving, but we all know that's on the horizon as far as the transportation industry as a whole is going.
And I hope you'll indulge me just for a second here, but you mentioned e-axle versus just a normal axle. What's the difference between the two?
So a lot you'll have your electric motor, and it connects to a traditional drive shaft, which then goes to an axle that has a differential, and then you're then changing the plane of the energy to go from one direction to the other direction to the actual wheel hubs. And so with an e-axle, the power is generated right at the axle and goes right to the wheels. And so in a conventional axle, you're going to have a little bit of power loss there. You also have the drive shaft that's going to be running down the vehicle, which is going to take up some space. And then there's higher maintenance because you have more moving parts, more fluids, potential for things to break down.
In the kind of the spirit of looking into the future, I guess, I want to ask you, what's next for RIZON Canada? Are there plans to expand the lineup, to introduce new models, to grow your presence in other regions? You mentioned BC and Quebec. I think it's interesting to kind of gauge where people are. So I want to know, what does the future look like for RIZON? What do you hope the future looks like?
Yeah, so we're looking at expanding across Canada. Like I said before, I think Canadians are much more in tune with kind of going green and environmental initiatives. And so we're looking at plugging into markets where it makes sense in, more densely populated urban areas. So right now we're in Vancouver and Victoria, as well as Montreal, Quebec City, and Ottawa with a dealer Global Cam out there. We also just signed on Premier Truck Group in Mississauga, so we can service the greater Toronto area. I expect probably one or two more cities that we'll look to get signed on this year. I won't, can't say anything at this point now. And then as far as RIZON more broadly, because Daimler has other offerings in 6, 7, 8 segment, we're going to be sticking to the class 4, 5. But the great thing is that we're able to give feedback straight to the factory as far as what are customers in North America looking for. And so, we're exploring different things like gross combined vehicle weight to be able to tow a trailer, what kind of features. We're even looking at different things like how are the cup holders like working for North America and things like that. And so the great thing about Daimler is very customer centric on their feedback as well, with German engineering, always looking to kind of progress down the road. And so we're helping build out kind of, 5-10 year game plan for what this chassis and platform looks like in the future.
And I always like to open it up. I want to always like to toss it over to whoever I'm talking to at the end, just to, if there's anything that you haven't said that you've kind of got locked and loaded that you want to say, if there's anything you want to get out there about RIZON, about the product, about what you hope to see, what you hope people take away, the stage is yours effectively. So what would you like to say?
Yeah, so I've probably mentioned it a few times already. It's like that service and support is so huge, and the saying in kind of dealership world in some places is sales sells the first truck, but service sells the rest, right? Because we want people to have a smooth experience with RIZON. We're dedicated again to keeping that uptime for people, and I think too, in anyone kind of looking to electrify their medium duty or heavy duty fleet is just like don't be closed minded as far as like I have to swap mine one for one. Diesel for one electric, and to look at how can you utilize different shift changes or different charging opportunities. Can you charge on a lunch break? Can you break up someone's run? Different things like that can help you electrify a bit sooner, and just be open to hearing other people and not necessarily being so quick to say no.
All right. Thanks, Adam, for coming down and chatting with me. Like I was saying, it's always fun to talk to people at this event because honestly, right now it's a nice breath of fresh air to remember that a lot of advances are happening right now. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in a positive direction, and it's always nice, I think, to be reminded of that. So thanks so much for coming down and having a chat with me.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for all the work you guys are doing.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel for more updates on fleet electrification and other sustainable transportation solutions. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Go Electric Fleet Show.